No, they're going to surrender. Inflation is going to win that war. The Fed's going to run to fight another battle. At least it's going to try to fight because it's going to lose that battle too. And that battle is going to be recession, maybe financial crisis, maybe a battle to try to prop up the U.S. government, whose insolvency is becoming a bigger problem with rising interest rates. In fact, I looked up on the national debt clock, and as of right now, the national debt is about to hit 31.5 trillion. In fact, by the time a lot of people listen to this podcast, it will be over 31.5 trillion. And that number is getting bigger and bigger, but the cost of financing that debt is getting bigger and bigger because of the rate hikes. Not only the rate hikes that we've already had, but the rate hikes that are going to come.
Will we have a moment of sight in 2023? Everyone seems to be too optimistic about 2023, including Joe Biden and even the federal. However, the Fed has been holding an evil smile it doesn't want anyone to show. The reason for that is it knows what's coming. The biggest loss will be for the households that don't know about this year's financial crises and recessions. The Fed is saying everything is going smoothly so as not to panic people. However, perhaps, it's better for people to be told about the realities. Peter Schiff, the chief economist at Euro-Pacific Capital Asset Management, strategist, author, analyst, and market commentator, has got some good and bad news for you. Even if the good news is not that big, it will ease some burden. So, what is it? Watch the video because we are revealing what you must know. Let's get started. During the last few months, people have not heard any good news. Honestly, the unstable financial conditions and the shaky economy have deprived households of all positivity. However, Peter Schiff has got some good news for you. Even if this good news outbids the bad news, let's not underestimate it. But what is it? Well, Peter Schiff said there is a group of people who have high hopes for 2023 that the interest rates will come down. This camp thinks that inflation will lose the battle in 2023, so the Fed will have a precise method to cut down the interest rates. In turn, this will bring everything back to normal, and the Fed will start to have its legitimacy back. Peter Schiff said their expectations are half right and half wrong. In other words, interest rates will come down this year when the Fed gets some positive indicators. However, this does not mean the interest rates will be coming down due to ebbing inflation. No, inflation is not going anywhere. Even inflation will win the battle going on, where the Fed has put everything at stake. Peter Schiff said that the Fed would surrender to inflation in 2023, and people need to accept this. Some people still hope to buy things at prices the same as 2 years before. However, that's just an illusion. Everyone should accept that after the succession of drastic events, inflation will remain high no matter what the government does. Peter Schiff said that after losing to inflation, the Fed has to engage in another battle without getting the time to rest. Here's a little reminder to like the video if you are loving it. And if you don't want to miss videos about the evolving economics and the financial order, subscribe to our channel. Let's continue now. 2023 will be the year where the Fed will be the most active feudal player. It will be trying everything it can, but nothing will make sense. The next battle will be between the recession and the federal. And the results can be anticipated now. The Fed will lose this battle, too, because a financial crisis might take over. The Fed might try to protect the U.S. government from solvencies, however, in doing so, it will cause a crisis which will be difficult to manage. But why government solvencies? Well, since the interest rates are increasing, the U.S. incumbent government has to pay more for sovereign debts. Listen to what Peter Schiff said about that.
Because everybody is hanging their hat on the fact that inflation is going to come down in 2023. And because inflation is going to come down, the Fed is not going to have to be as aggressive as many people suspect. The Fed will be able to ease up on the rate hikes. And in fact, if enough progress is made on inflation, many people expect the Fed to reverse course and begin cutting interest rates before the end of the year. Now, I agree with that camp. I think there is a good chance that the Fed will cut rates. In fact, there's probably an even better chance that they will go back to quantitative easing, whether they cut rates or not. But I do expect the Federal Reserve to ease policy in 2023, but not because of a victory in the war against inflation. No, they're going to surrender. Inflation is going to win that war. The Fed's going to run to fight another battle. At least it's going to try to fight because it's going to lose that battle too. And that battle is going to be recession, maybe financial crisis, maybe a battle to try to prop up the U.S. government, whose insolvency is becoming a bigger problem with rising interest rates. In fact, I looked up on the national debt clock, and as of right now, the national debt is about to hit 31.5 trillion. In fact, by the time a lot of people listen to this podcast, it will be over 31.5 trillion. And that number is getting bigger and bigger, but the cost of financing that debt is getting bigger and bigger because of the rate hikes. Not only the rate hikes that we've already had, but the rate hikes that are going to come. And because servicing this debt is going to become so problematic in 2023, that's another reason that the Federal Reserve is going to back off of its rate hikes and, in fact, may have to go back to quantitative easing because they will need to buy treasuries that private buyers don't want at interest rates that the U.S. government can't afford. But while I'm on
Peter Schiff said that now, the U.S. debts have reached $31.5 billion, whose payments are increasing. This will add pressure on the incumbent government led by Joe Biden. Now, that will be the point where the U.S. government will be the victim of the very policy it has formulated. At that point, it will realize how the U.S. households have been struggling in the high-interest rate, heated environment. When debt repayments come, there won't be enough reserves. Hence, to ensure that the incumbent government stays in power, the Fed will be pressured to lower interest rates. That will be the good news the U.S. households could benefit from. Now, you can see that the interest rates won't come down due to lowering inflation. Rather, it will be due to artificial reasons and to save the present U.S. government. Since the private investors don't want to buy the treasuries, the Fed has to ensure interest rates are lower so that the U.S. government can buy them. It's like deciding how much interest rate you want when you are offering loans and how much interest rate you want when you have loans. Since the Fed has to follow what Joe Biden will ask, the interest rates will come down. That will be when U.S. citizens could use the opportunity and secure loans at lower interest rates. But don't forget, Peter Schiff is talking about 2023, which means that the Fed might allow the interest rates to hike at the end of 2023. This will be done when the U.S. government has paid the debt payments. But what is the Fed doing to bring inflation down? Well, now, you would have understood that the Fed does not care what the citizens are going through. It's a power only the U.S. government can use to cover the unjust and spendthrifty debts it had earlier taken. Peter Schiff said that inflation is increasing, and to make both ends meet, Americans have to use credit cards. We mean there are homes a family needs to run, which is impossible in today's highly inflated environment. How the U.S. government and the Fed are expecting young couples to run their homes and put food on the table. Obviously, they have to take loans, which puts them in a deeper whirlpool. On the other hand, the Fed is literally doing nothing. It's trying to show that it is trying its best to bring inflation down. However, in reality, no materialistic results are visible. It's a common strategy institutions use to switch between things to show they are working. The Fed is doing the same by correcting the commodity prices and maintaining housing prices. However, if you see beneath the surface, the Fed has decorated well, and there are no chances of inflation coming down in 2023. People have to accept it as a norm and live with that. Prices will go up because the U.S. imports everything, and the tanking U.S. dollar can make them expensive with every passing day of 2023. Another reason why people think inflation will come down in 2023 is increasing employment. They expect that when the unemployment rate increases, the Fed has to bring inflation down, but that's not how things work. The Fed is saying that high wages are causing inflation. However, it's the opposite of absolute reality. Inflation is causing wages to go up, not the other way around. Listen to what Peter Schiff said about that.
Supply is expanding. and that's going to continue to put upward pressure on prices. The Fed is making no real headway in its battle against inflation. All that we've seen is a temporary correction in commodity prices, a downturn in house prices, but beneath the surface, the inflationary forces are as strong as ever. In fact, they're getting stronger. And so all these people who are expecting a meaningful reduction in the inflation rate in 2023 aren't going to get what they expect. After a brief downturn in the official numbers, we're going to see a surge as consumers continue to spend borrowed money, but more importantly, as the dollar tanks, putting huge upward pressure not only on commodities, causing a reversal and a run to new highs, but on the record level of imports, because everything America buys, and of course, most of the stuff, the merchandise that we buy is made abroad, all that stuff is going to get a lot more expensive as the dollar falls. And the other reason, of course, that people think that inflation may come down in 2023 is they think the unemployment rate will go up, and they expect a rise in unemployment to bring down inflation. In fact, many people still think that's the Fed's goal, that the Fed's plan is to fight inflation by fighting employment, by causing an increase in unemployment, by causing a slowdown at the rate at which wages are rising. People think that rising wages cause inflation, and so the Fed needs to slow down wage growth with its rate hikes. But rising wages don't cause inflation. In fact, looking at wages going up and concluding that's the reason for inflation is like somebody who's sick and they have a fever, and so they take their temperature with a thermometer, and then the thermometer says 102, and they blame their fever on the thermometer. Well, it's not the thermometer's fault. It's just reflecting your temperature. Well, that's the same thing with wages. Rising wages aren't causing inflation. Inflation is causing wages to rise. So the wages are simply taking the economy's temperature when it comes to inflation. Now, you can't fight inflation by trying to stop wages from going up. That would be like trying to fight your fever by smashing your thermometer, or maybe lowering the reading by putting the thermometer in a cup of ice water. That's not going to work. If you ignore the underlying illness and just try to cover up the symptoms or deny they're there, then you're going to get sicker. The same thing is going to happen with inflation. If the Fed is thinking that rising wages are the problem and it tries to solve that or cover that up, then the underlying actual problem that is causing wages to go up is going to continue, and that's inflation. And in fact,
do you agree with Peter Schiff that interest rates will come down this year? What do you think about the Fed surrendering to brutal inflation and losing the battle to recession? The Fed is not talking about inflation and recession. Reality won't wait for anyone to recognize it. Comment right below in the comment section, what if a financial crisis takes over 2023? What if things turn out to be real in the future, as Peter Schiff is saying? Havoc will prevail then. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more videos on the latest economics and financial news. Until the next video, stay tuned.